Love Pamela by Pamela Anderson. I just finished reading this. It is a brand new book out, her memoir. You can get it obviously in the physical copy, also in Audible, which she reads in her own voice, which is great. It's a little bit of a different writing style, and it wasn't until the end, until the acknowledgments, when I sort of figured out why. She's talking about her editor. She enjoyed my original writing style, but she also suggested we add full sentences and paragraphs. I told her I don't think in full sentences, let alone paragraphs. So that's why it takes 14 pages and you get, it's almost poems, poetic, and then after page 14 you get full sentences and paragraphs, and that is thanks to her editor, just not the way Pamela thinks. So Pamela Anderson was born in 1967. She had a hard childhood, a very interesting childhood, right on the beach on Vancouver Island. You can't get a more idyllic setting. I've been there, it's fantastic. But she had sort of a violent childhood, a little bit of domestic abuse in her family. She was sexualized very young. Even after she left her parents' house, she lived in her friend's closet in Victoria. Like, that's how little money she had and little support from home. Although she loved her parents, and she to this day loves her parents, and they are still together, it still was a very interesting, hard childhood, but it made her who she is today. I have also just finished this memoir, Spare, and you couldn't get any more different. We'll talk about that later. But she's quite impulsive. She's fly by the seat of her pants. She wings it. That's just the way she is. She's been married 6 times, I think. Not quite sure. She doesn't really go into it much in the book. She goes into Tommy Lee, of course, which was her main marriage, and Kid Rock. Some of her other marriages were so quick, and one person she married twice. Interesting. When she talks about Tommy Lee, it's quite factual, and it doesn't get into the nitty-gritty, and it's not gossipy, it's not sensationalized, it's not making mountains out of molehills, which this one does. It's just the way it was. And there was the sex tape, of course. She barely gets into the sex tape, and again, it's just factual. She was humiliated by it. Unfortunately, just the way the world works, especially maybe in the early 90s, it helped Tommy Lee's career. I mean, he's a drummer in a rock band, and, you know, he's male, but it didn't help her career at all. But she is so resilient. She's done so many things. She's written novels, she's written poetry, now she's written this. No ghostwriter at all. It was just her. Of course, it was edited and all that sort of stuff, but it was her, not a ghostwriter. And it's a shorter book. It's just over 200 pages, not like the 400 pages we get here. So there's no extra stories like frozen body parts that don't mean anything to the story. It gets right to the point. Pam has a huge, strong work ethic, and she likes to keep busy. And one part stood out to me here. She's in Vegas doing a magic show. She's the assistant. And she hired a professional clown to teach her how to make balloon animals, never wasting time, never wanting to waste time. So when she's sitting getting her makeup and her hair done for this magical show, she's learning how to make balloon animals. Like, what a random, that's just so random, very random. But then she says, always good to have skills, as many as you can to keep in your pocket, something to fall back on. She's very, very interesting. She's not one-dimensional. She's not just a blonde bombshell, a bimbo. She is very multi-layered, very well read. She name drops all of these books she's read, and artists and poetry, and they're hard books. There's no fluffy romance fiction that she's reading. She is reading some serious books. She's an activist, climate change, the plight of refugees all over the world. When Pam does visit other countries, she visits museums and galleries and historical sites, like very, very well-rounded person. Unlike, I don't mean to keep comparing them. Let's just compare them really quickly here. Pam does talk about the paparazzi and how hard it was when she was married to Tommy Lee. But she doesn't go on, and it doesn't ruin her life. She doesn't have a ghostwriter, has a ghostwriter. She does not whiny. And their childhoods couldn't be any more different, like very different. You are a product of all your experiences in life. Maybe Harry was a little bit more spoiled. She was not spoiled at all. Very, very naive. She's living in Vancouver at the time, and she's already been sort of discovered at on the Jumbotron at the Canadian football game. And she says, I realized then that I could actually make money living this way. I was still giving my parents half of everything I made. I thought everybody did. And I continue to support them now and will for the rest of their lives. So, I mean, nice that she gives her parents money, but I'm the same age as her, and I was not sending half of my paychecks to my parents. Like, very naive sort of way to grow up. Great. She is so selfless, not self-centered. It's amazing. I find that she is very self-aware. Even though she's naive, she's very self-aware. At one point, talking about her husbands, I never believed in trying to change people, just change husbands. I found that very funny. Like, she just knows that she's the common denominator. She even says that, common denominator, in all of her marriages. All in all, very enjoyable book. She's very into self-talk, which, you know, if you've watched any of my videos, you know I'm really into that voice in your head and what you're saying to yourself. On one page here, on page 95, she says, you can think your way out of living. This is when I learned to flip the script. When you change your thoughts, you change your life. I love that. Love that. I totally agree with that, and I love it. And she also says here on page 163, everyone alive is a mess. We are all just doing the best we can. And let me tell you, she has done the best she can. She was on Broadway, on TV shows, in movies. She's written books. So accomplished. I had no idea. I honestly had no idea. So if you can, read it, listen to it on Audible in her own voice. Not gossipy, definitely not whiny in any way, shape, or form. A great book. Highly recommend it.